Back in the 1800s, a farmer and his daughter head into the market to sell that year's crop so they can survive the winter. They sell everything and have plenty of money to make it through the winter. On the way back, the father notices a pack of robbers behind them. He breaks down because he knows that they are planning to take all of the money. The daughter says, "Quick, Dad, give me the money." Moments later, the robbers take everything they can. The father begins to cry and the daughter says, "It's okay, Dad, I have the money still." He replies, "Where did you hide it?" She says, "In my He replies, "Damn, if we had brought your mother, we could have saved the horse and cart too." At a mental institution, a nurse walks into a room and sees a patient acting like he's driving a car. The nurse asks him, "Charlie, what are you doing?" Charlie replies, "Driving to Chicago." The nurse wishes him a good trip and leaves the room. The next day, the nurse enters Charlie's room just as he stops driving his imaginary car and asks, "Well, Charlie, how you doing?" Charlie says, "I just got into Chicago." "Great," replies the nurse. The nurse leaves Charlie's room and goes across the hall into Bob's room and finds Bob sitting on his bed furiously masturbating. Shocked, she asks, "Bob, what are you doing?" Bob says, "I'm doing Charlie's wife while he's in Chicago." The date was arranged for an old-fashioned visitor from America with a lively Irish girl. They strolled in the park under the moonlight until they came to a secluded spot where he kissed her several times lightly on the cheek. "That, my dear," he said, "is called spooning." "Spooning may be all right for you," she replied, "but I would rather shovel." "That wife of mine is a liar," said the angry husband to a sympathetic pal seated next to him in a bar. "How do you know?" the friend asked. "She didn't come home last night, and when I asked her where she'd been, she said she had spent the night with her sister Shirley." "So?" the friend replied. "So she's a liar. I spent the night with her sister Shirley." A young man is walking his dog in the park when a beautiful young woman stops to admire the animal. "What's your dog's name?" she asks flirtatiously. "Herpes," replies the dog's owner. "How odd!" exclaims the woman. "Why in the world did you name your dog Herpes?" The young man replies, "Because he just won't heal." Businessman and his secretary, overcome by passion, go to his house for an early afternoon quickie. "Don't worry," he assures her. "My wife is out of town on a business trip, so there's no risk." As one thing leads to another, the woman reaches into her purse and suddenly gasps. "We have to stop. I forgot to bring my contraceptive." "No problem," he replies. "I'll get my wife's diaphragm." After a few minutes of searching, he returns to the bedroom in a fury. "That witch!" he exclaims. "She took it with her. I always knew she didn't trust me." A woman went to see her psychiatrist. "I'm really concerned," she said. "The other day I found my daughter and the little boy next door together naked and examining each other's bodies and giggling." The psychiatrist smiled. "That's nothing to worry about. It's pretty normal." "Well, I don't know," said the woman. "It worries me. It worries my daughter's husband too." Man and his wife are sound asleep in bed when the phone rings. The man picks up, listens for a second, and says, "How the hell would I know, you idiot? I'm not a weatherman," before slamming down the receiver. "Who was that?" asks his wife. "Wrong number. It was some idiot asking if the coast was clear." A man went to the police station wishing to speak with the burglar who had broken into his house the night before. "You'll get your chance in court," said the desk sergeant. No, 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 insisted the man. I want to know how he got into the house without waking my wife. I've been trying to do that for years. The young, blonde bride made her first appointment with a gynecologist and told him that she and her husband wished to start a family. We have been trying for months now, doctor, and I don't seem to be able to get pregnant. She confessed miserably. I'm sure we'll solve your problem, the doctor reassured her, if you'll just take off your clothes and get up on the examination table. Well, alright, doctor, agreed the young woman, blushing. But I'd rather have my husband's baby. Three priests were taking a shower together in a church. They ran out of soap. Thinking the church was empty, one walked naked down the hall to the supply closet. Halfway back, the naked priest saw three nuns walking towards him. He immediately froze and pretended to be a statue. The first nun took one look and said, "What a realistic looking statue." The second nun reached and felt the priest's dick, and he dropped the bar of soap. "Wow, a dispenser!" she exclaimed. The third nun reached over, pulled on his dick, and said, "Hand cream too." A woman goes into a dentist's office, and after he's through examining her, he says, "I am sorry to tell you this, but I'm going to have to drill a tooth." The woman then says, "Ooh, the pain is so awful, I'd rather have a baby." To which the dentist replies, "Make up your mind, I have to adjust the chair." Salesman is going door to door. At one house, a snotty little brat answers the door. "Tell you what," he says to the salesman, "I can persuade my parents to buy pretty much anything. If you can do everything I can do, I'll talk them into buying something. If you lose, then you give $10. Figuring that there's no way a 9-year-old brat could outsmart him, the salesman agrees to the deal. Immediately, the kid climbs up the drain pipe and hops onto the flat roof. The salesman does exactly the same. The kid then runs across the roof, does a triple cartwheel and lands in the back garden, with the salesman following suit. Then the kid runs to where his teenage sister is sunbathing topless. He rushed over to her and kissed her on the left breast. Not to be outdone, the salesman leaps over and does the same. The kid then gropes both her sister's tits, so does the salesman. Then the brat pulls out his dick, wraps it round his little finger and says, "Where's my $10? A blonde and a brunette walk into a bar. As they sit down, the brunette notices a guy checking out the blonde. So the brunette decides to go and talk to this guy. She walks up to him and says, "I see you've been checking out my friend. You know, the blonde sitting over there, she's pretty, isn't she?" The guy responds, "Oh man, she's just gorgeous, absolutely beautiful." The brunette says, "Well, for $50 I can arrange for you to smell her crotch." The guy says, "Well, yes, of course." He pulls out the money and hands it to her. She takes it and breathes in his face. Little Johnny was at school and his teacher was teaching the 4 basic food groups. Johnny asks, "What food group do light bulbs fall into?" His teacher replies, "Light bulbs are not edible, and they don't fall into any food group." Little Johnny insists that light bulbs are food because his dad eats light bulbs. The teacher tries to get little Johnny to drop the subject, but he would just not let it go. He says, "I know that light bulbs are edible because I heard my dad tell my mom that if she would turn off the light, he would eat it." The subway train was packed. It was rush hour, and many people were forced to stand. One particularly cramped woman turned to the man behind her and said, "Sir, if you don't stop poking me with your thing, I'm going to the police." The man answers, "I don't know what you're talking about, miss. That's just my paycheck in my pocket." "Oh, really?" she spat. "Then you must have some job, because that's your 5th raise you've had in the last hour." 3 women were sitting around talking about their bed lives. The first said, "I think my husband's like a championship golfer. He has spent the last 10 years perfecting his stroke." The second woman said, "My husband's like the winner of the motor racing Grand Prix. Every time we get into bed, he gives me several hundred exciting laps." The third woman was silent until she was asked, "Tell us about your husband." She thought for a moment and said, "My husband's like an Olympic gold medalist for the 400 meters." "How so?" the women asked. The silent woman says, "He's got his time down to under 45 seconds. It was a nice sunny day and 3 men were walking down a country road when they saw a bush with a pig's ass popping out. The first man says, "I wish that was Demi Moore's ass." The second man says, "I wish that was Pamela Anderson's ass." Then the third man says, "I wish it was dark." A couple on the brink of divorce visit a marriage counselor. The counselor asks the wife, "What is the problem?" She responds, "My wife suffers from premature ejaculation." The counselor turns to her husband and inquires, "Is that true?" The husband replies, "Well, not exactly. It's her that suffers, not me." And was wandering around a carnival and he happened to see a fortune teller's tent. Thinking it would be good for a laugh, he went inside and sat down. "Ah," said the woman, as she gazed into her crystal ball, "I see you are the father of 2 children." "That's what you think?" said the man scornfully. "I'm the father of 3 children." The woman grinned and said, "That's what you think."